Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Leapspiration Week, a full week of leaping into your highest, best, brightest purpose, passion, and life. We are here at Leap Day Week, which is on February 29th, and I have been interviewing so many amazing speakers, keynote speakers, spiritual teachers, and motivators out there. And today, without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest, Dr. Patti Ashley, psychologist, author, educator, and authenticity architect. I love that phrase, actually. I'm like, oh my God, that is just like, that says it all. Authenticity architecture. And teacher, Patti Ashley, Dr. Patti Ashley, please welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, and I love authenticity architecture too, and I like that people get it, and it just defines who I am for sure.
Oh, absolutely. It totally speaks volumes. It has a beautiful energy and growth of its own. It just, when you say the words, it takes flight.
Yeah, thank you, because I'm really stepping into that as my brand. So I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, and that's why we have you here, because we've been friends for years, and you've just recently interviewed me for a big project that you did. You're From Fear to Love to Grace Summit, and I was just so honored and happy to be a part of that. So thank you so much for that. But authenticity architecture, let's start there. Where did you come up with that phrase and the whole concept of authenticity and architecture together?
Yeah, thank you for asking, because it does evolve like any creative process, right? It doesn't just well, sometimes maybe for some people it does, but I think like everything in life, it has to grow from a seed and grow to fruition. So I feel like it's really ripe right now and ready for picking. But the seed started, as a little girl, losing my father to a sudden heart attack and not being able to find a safe place to talk about it. And then growing up and becoming a mom and in a troubled marriage and trying to find myself and all that, and seeking God, because my dad was no longer on the planet and I was supposed to be happy because he's in heaven. So I want to know where that was. So I think, we're all born with a certain essence of who we are. And I know that because I have 4 kids and they're all different. And so I guess a part of my essence is just a huge curiosity about everything, and especially losing my dad, who was my best friend, made me really want to figure out everything. And I don't think and my answer to all that is it's a mystery and we can't figure out everything. However, in the process, I developed so much understanding and awareness around leaving my marriage and raising my kids and learning how to be a good parent in light of going against the grain, and developing my psychotherapy practice and hearing similar stories over and over and over, and writing my book on moms not being good enough. And then Brene Brown shows up with her research on shame, which really tied together everything, in my life, what I'd learned and what I'd lived in terms of how we hold back from living our authentic self because we've been taught to be a certain way. And my dear mentor, who I hold in my heart right now, she has Alzheimer's, and she's probably my greatest teacher. And I went out and did a lot of talks for her because she was a local parent education expert in Virginia Beach, where I was living at the time. And she would say, children come into the world very much like a packet of seeds with no cover on the front. And it's our job as a parent or a teacher to provide the adequate water, air, nutrition, and light to raise that seed to its fullest potential. It's not our job to raise a rose into a carnation or a carnation into a rose. And that really sticks with me and speaks so true to a lot of the dysfunctional family patterns and systems that I also have studied through the years, and how, as a parent educator, realizing back in the 80s, with all the information we had about child development, how hard it was for parents to really wrap their head around it, because the truth is it's nonverbal. because of all this belief about being good enough and loving ourselves, which I don't know too many people who can say that's true for them, that they can love themselves. It's usually, I don't know about that.
Right.
What we've learned in brain development is the architecture, back to, I haven't forgotten your question, the architecture of the brain that develops in the first 3 years, that's nonverbal and sensory, creates these neural connections in the brain that says, I'm emotionally safe, I'm loved, I'm lovable, I'm cared for. And the body goes, I feel good. I mean, it's not ideal and optimal in any case. And I think what's happened in my book, The Shadow of the Too Good Mother Archetype, is mothers overcompensating to make sure that their kiddos get that experience, and yet they don't go back and restructure their own authentic self, because that's when it organically happens. This experience of being a whole mother then organically mirrors to the kiddo what the kiddo needs to see. And I used to joke when I was a parent educator back in the 90s that, I chose that profession because I think it's going to take lifetimes to repair what we're doing. And maybe in like 4 or 5 lifetimes from now, I'll reincarnate into a family where they really figured it out.
Right.
So the authenticity architecture is that authentic self. Like I said earlier, I think I was born with a huge curiosity. My brother and sister didn't have this. They were older when my father died, but they didn't have the same curiosity to figure it all out like I did. And that's okay. There's no judgment. Everybody's different. So authenticity architecture is about digging up those parts of ourselves that we've lost. And really the harder part is going into those first 3 years where we have no cognitive memory. And it's usually in the body, it's somatic. What feeling do I have? How do I work with the body memory and that sort of thing? So yeah, I've kind of put it all together, the early childhood work, the parent education work, working as a teacher, being a mother, being a therapist, and seeing all these aspects of self. It's like remodeling a house was the other idea that came to me. It's like, first it was going to be authenticity archaeologist. And I thought, well, we need to dig it all up. And then we also need to put it back together. So we need to restructure and reconstruct, which is the architecture piece. And the good news is there's neuroplasticity in the brain, and we can create neural connections of feeling lovable and good enough. But most of us have overridden all that because in the first 7 years of life, all of it's set up like we're almost in a hypnotic trance the rest of our lives after we're 7. And in order to identify the pieces that are keeping us stuck, that's the work that I do, and then help people recognize that it's not just, we can't, if we could just say, get over it and change, I wouldn't have a job. You probably wouldn't have a job.
Sure.
Life
Right.
would be very different. And so I think giving people permission, like my client came in yesterday and said, I was so mad. I feel like everything I've done is just, pointless. And I'm like, that's not true. Right. It's all there. It's just a wave that's coming up right now. And I think that's what happens in our inner work is we want to stop the hard stuff. But Carl Jung said, what we resist persists. So my job is really as a guide to help people, really pay attention, build self-awareness, and reconstruct what they really want. Like, if you're buying a house, you go to the home store and pick out which kind of fixtures you want in your sink. It's the same thing. Like, what do I really want? And it requires the process of, reconstruction, and that's not easy. If you can't just go get the sink and just,
put it in
wave
there,
a magic wand and it's in. You have to work with getting out the old one, seeing how the new one's going to fit. It's the same thing, only in an emotional experience of reconstruction.
Right. I love what you said about by the time you're 7, you're in a hypnotic state. Because I totally relate with that, because I've been doing a lot of inner child work myself with Nick Demas, who's also on this special. And I was showing him pictures of me full of joy at 2 and 3 with my Raggedy Ann doll and, full of light. And then there's this one of me in this Christian school uniform. And I'm like this, and I'm kind of like hypnotic. And I flashed them up in front of the screen to him during our session and showed them to him. And he was like, oh my gosh, I totally see a difference. I said, it's almost as if I just okay, I'm here. I've been told how to act,
Mhm.
and I've been told, I've been conditioned to just sit here and be.
Mm.
And the light was out of my eyes in that first grade picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you just brought that to light here, I went, wow, that is fully what happened to me.
Mhm. And that's Bruce
Absolutely.
Lipton's work, The Biology of Belief. I don't know if you read his book. Well, him and a lot of other people, but he was really
Mhm.
the pioneer in epigenetics because he wanted to debunk the idea that the genes you get are the genes you get and there's nothing you can do about it, you know. And I always
Right.
curious about that too, you know, like with alcoholism. You know, people say, "Oh, you've got the genes, so you're really screwed." And I thought,
Right.
that's kind of a doomsday diagnosis. I'm
Isn't
wondering
it?
if there's more. And then Bruce Lipton came out with this idea that we can change our DNA and we can
Mhm.
change our genetics, and we do it through the environment and through the messages we give ourselves. And we can't just do it by, again, saying do it. We have to
Right.
really go in and really reconstruct. So his work is just really phenomenal in terms
Oh,
of
it is.
understanding that.
Oh, yes.
And I love the inner child work because again, I started in the 80s and with my kiddos and learning about, and that's when John Bradshaw and Charles Whitfield and all the
Yes.
inner child people were doing their thing. And that kind of just sort of faded away in a sense because we got into more of the cognitive brain research stuff. And so I guess I kind of put it together. I don't want to leave out that inner child work because I think that's probably the most important part.
Most important, yes, absolutely. Now, you've written some beautiful pieces. One you just mentioned, the full title is
Living in the shadow of the
Shadow.
true good mother archetype.
Oh my goodness.
It's a long one.
That it is a long one, but it's necessary because I too was, I've raised three children, and I still have a little bit of that. I go back to that shame
Yeah.
feeling of, did I do enough?
Hmm.
Did I love enough? Did I nurture enough? And then I have to learn I am enough. And I
Exactly.
loved my children. And
Yeah.
I absolutely did my best through it, and I love that you have that book out there and that piece of work. And then you have one that's so very new and beautiful as well. And it's been the inspiration for your From Fear to Love Summit, Letters to Freedom.
Hmm.
And could you please share and speak a little bit on that book and that beautiful work of the heart?
Yeah. And I want to say when my first book came out, Lawrence Freedom and I started dating November. The book came out in March that year.
Wow.
And he
Uh-huh.
always wanted to write a book. So Lawrence is my partner who passed away, and the book Letters to Freedom is about my relationship with him and my relationship with grief from losing my dad and my life's journey. And so when you mentioned my first book, part of me feels like I somewhat abandoned that for the relationship because relationships take a lot of time. And I had been single for a while trying to discover my authentic self separate from relationship, and had jumped full on into publishing my dissertation results in a book that for lay people that they could read and really digest. This is the experience I'm seeing is happening with women. So that book kind of got put on the shelf. And um, I think it's so important to acknowledge what you just said about still having those feelings and doubts and wonder about, was I a good enough mom? And I think that really relates to the authenticity architecture so well because even because I was trying to think this morning of what we would call that, like Carolyn Mace calls it reptiles. And,
Mm,
I think Brene Brown
right.
has another word for the shame monsters, that come up, that the body always wins, as Bessel van der Kolk, a big trauma therapist, says, this body memory is always going to try and override it. So even after I've written my book and did my dissertation and healed so much in my life, I still today, deal with, oh my gosh, did I ruin my kiddos? And I
Oh,
didn't, because they're amazing. They're really great. And they've had their life challenges because I haven't kind
good.
of taken a traditional path. So when Lawrence and I started dating, I finally felt like I had met this midlife man of my dreams, a person that really adored me and loved me and showed up for me in a way that I hadn't experienced before. And I almost had it's a too good to be true feeling about it. But we were in a whirlwind romance for 2 years before he died. And the last few months we were struggling a little bit, and I was writing him some love letters that I was holding in a box as we were kind of doing some individuation work on our own. And the last letter I wrote, I was putting in the box when I got the call from his friend who had found him on the floor, and he had died of a sudden heart attack, which is the same way my father died. When I was found on the living room floor. I saw my father on the living room floor
Wow.
the morning he died. And so the image of what it must have been like for Lawrence's friend to see Lawrence on the floor, just, I know is troubling him still. And so I didn't know what to do, because I knew that I became a counselor to help people with grief. And I knew that I had worked on my own resolve grief. And I knew that Lawrence was a sweet part of my life that, you know, felt so safe and was all about helping me heal. And it was like the rug was pulled out from underneath me. And I thought, okay, well, what I know about grief is you have to go through it. You can't go around it. So every day I'm going to have an awareness of what I'm experiencing. And I kept thinking about stories and things that had happened in our relationship. And so I started writing them at night and crying and just remembering. And I'm so glad I did it now, because it's been 3 years, 3 months now. And I'm so glad that I got to capture those stories at that time. And I think that's really important with grief, is to be able to do that. And I'm trying to help people to do that with grief, because I think it's important. Now I have those stories. And then what happened was I thought, oh, months down the road, I was like, wow, gosh, will these stories and my story help people with grief, because people relate to personal stories. So it was quite vulnerable to make the decision to publish it. I contacted the publisher of my first book, and she said, yeah, I love it. Let's do it. And then we kind of lost touch for a few months. And I went under contract with another book that should be out in the next few months, on shame and working with shame in clinical practice for therapists. And so I thought, that's okay, because this book is too vulnerable. I'll just, Letters to Freedom doesn't need to be out in the world. And then Nancy, my publisher, emailed me and she said, are we still going to do this? And I was like, sure, why not? I've got this other contract, but why not? And it was a lot of work to try and finish that and do this other book. So 2019 for me was quite a year. So we were able to do it though, and we got it out on Lawrence's, what would have been his 64th birthday, April 9th of 2019. And we had a big party, and you were there. And
Yes.
you're in the book. You know, I write about some of the
Aw.
messages. I know you
So honored.
and you know, and I think that's the sweet spot for me in the story, is that my experience of losing people is not that we should be happy they're in a better place. It's because they're in a different place, they're still with us. And
Yes.
I have to also honor my humanness and my own grief. And doing both, and I think is challenging for us humans. So quite a gift to put that book out in the world for me. And I also believe for Lawrence, because he wanted to write a book. I think that's one of the things that attracted to him to me when we started dating, because he was really trying to write his book. And so part of what he was writing, which was From Fear to Love to Grace, I include in my book, Letters to Freedom. Thus, part of the reason I have the subtitle, From Fear to Love.
Yes. Beautiful. Well, segueing into grace, what does grace mean to you today?
Well, I'm trying to remember Anne Lamont's quote that I have in the front of the book. It says something like, grace meets us where we are, but does not leave us where it found us, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's a transformation of sorts. You know, grace also has, speaking of religion, I think when we go into words and semantics, we can get so wrapped up in our personal story of what those words have meant to us. And so some people think of grace as, you know, a religious
Sure.
idea, and we get it from God, something out there. And because my journey has been recognizing that God isn't out there, God is in all of us, everywhere, all the time, and we're all connected to this grace when we open up to it. And that's the problem. We get so much in our fear, and we start trying to control our lives, and we miss those moments of grace that are there all the time waiting. We just miss it because we're busy trying to be in control of our lives, which is a total illusion.
Right.
We have no control over anything.
Exactly. I know I always say when I meet with people, I understand my place because spirit is in control.
Yeah.
I understand my place. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you on that. Because I definitely have been contemplating on the concept and the understanding about grace for me ever since you interviewed me for the summit. And I have such a deeper understanding than when I gave you my answer about, it's just, I gave you my go-to answer. It's peace. Because it was like, oh, okay, here's my automatic answer. It's peace. Yeah. But for me, grace is a gamut of forgiveness, love, peacefulness, and just being. And allowance. Grace is allowance. So I feel like over the past few months since you've interviewed me, I've grown in the area of grace. So for that, my friend, I thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm wondering if other people are percolating on it too. I have the 18 interviews on the summit, which is available for purchase and on my website.
Yes.
I gave it away free on the launch day. And now I'm selling the interviews at a pretty significant discount for the amount of work, as you know, this kind of entails. And every single person of all the 18 authors and luminaries and inspiring people, I asked that question at the very end of the interview, and everybody had a different answer. So I need to go back and I think I want to do that and transcribe, everybody's definition. But it's interesting that you're saying it's still percolating, because it's one of those words. It is one of those nonverbal words, going back to early child development and authenticity architecture. I think grace, you can see grace in the love of a mother and child, right?
Yes, right.
That connecting, that full on, in a healthy attunement interaction, it's pure, right? And you don't have to say anything. It's a feeling that I am held and I am loved and I am lovable.
Right.
To me is grace.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Now, we had mentioned the summit being on your website, but I want to share all your projects that you have that you can speak about now. Yeah. Because as far as leaping, you have leaped. And, thank you so much for showing up the way you have over the past few years, because it's just been so inspiring to observe and watch you grow in your own leaping and your own. So where can someone, if they would like to get an appointment with you, and if they would like to learn more about your amazing work that you have online with the summit and the books, where can they get a hold of you, Miss Patti Ashley?
I think most of the main links are on the front page of my website, which is pattiashley.com. And I spell my name with an I. So that's PATTIASHLEY.com. I'm pretty sure I've updated the link for the summit. And I have a list of my upcoming events, which is super sweet that this is a leap year event, because I think one thing about when we really move through our grief and we go through the deep depth of the dark night of the soul and the sorrow, it really opens us up to more joy and magic. And I just get really excited about things like, oh, it's leap year, we get one extra day, right? Yes. Whereas some people might not think much about it. And I'm also like thinking it was just 2022 2020. And I was visualizing what's my life going to be like in 22.
Yes,
So,
there you go.
so finding the magic in everyday life is really, I think, what authenticity architecture is about. So the magic I'm offering on Leap Year is a New Year mandala drawing afternoon, because I've worked with mandalas for 25 years. I first took a class right after my divorce when I was really struggling with all
Sure.
that divorce entails. And I found what a healing tool it was. And so I've been using mandalas in various ways. And so this is an afternoon from 1 to 5 where I'll give you a history of the mandala. We'll do a guided meditation. I have stencils, so you don't have to worry about whether or not you can draw, and pencils and black paper. And we spend the afternoon moving into that meditative work and creating a personal mandala for Leap Year.
Yay.
So
Oh, I love that.
that's the upcoming event. Then I've also got a Mothering Beyond Image, or a mother's retreat that I'm doing in May. Hopefully my daughter can get here from Virginia, and it's based on the retreats I've done with moms for years and years and years around the research in my book around moms not feeling good enough. So it's an opportunity to come together and really support each other and understand this architecture of not feeling like a good enough mom, and really heal some of that. Yeah, and then my new book's coming out, and I'm doing a lot of publishing and writing articles and interviews, and I'm just having a ton of fun. And I tell you, it's terrifying at the same time. I think, I'm at the last season of my life, and I've been holding back for many years because it's terrifying.
Right.
And I just, after Lawrence died, and did the writing with the book and started putting my work out there, I feel like he's behind, kind of lifting me up, because he was a big ham. He loved going out and talking in front of people. And I have a lot to say, but I'm more kind of shy about it. And so
Sure.
he's kind of my muse, and he's getting me out there, and I know he's loving this and our time together. And so I'm hoping that my message is important and heals hearts, because that's what Lawrence's message was about. And
Sure. Yes.
I'm doing it.
Oh, and it is. And thank you again for showing up. And one thing about Lawrence, when he does come in for readings, one time he came in and I said, this is new for Lawrence. He's writing on a whiteboard. And everybody said, well, that would be Lawrence. I said, well, I've never had Lawrence come in from spirit and write on a whiteboard. And then you looked in your phone from one event that the two of you did together, and there he was on a whiteboard. And so he loved speaking. Yes, absolutely. I remember also one time he asked me how I prepared. And I've never shared this with you, but since we're talking about it, and how he used to love being in front of people and he was very comfortable. I'm not. I'm just like you. I'm a Gemini, so I can be extroverted and introverted at the same time. But to go replenish my spirits, I'm the introvert.
Yeah.
But he asked what I did to prepare for my group reading events, my audience events. And I told him that I listened to Bellfire, Can't Cry Hard Enough, and I told him I sing it. And he said, well, why don't you sing it in front of the audience?
Oh my gosh.
And I said, because where God gave me the gift to be able to speak to spirit, I'm lacking a little bit in vocals. And he said, oh, that's nonsense. And he says, sing it. And the Valentine's Day Love Notes from Heaven, the first one after he passed away, I sang Can't Cry Hard Enough in front of my audience for Lawrence.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
You didn't tell me that story, and I love it, because you remember at the party I sang a song with Rebecca Folsom, and now I'm taking voice lessons with her and wondering what the heck am I doing this for, because I've always been told I can't sing, and it's really, it is really hard.
It's an illusion, which is an illusion.
This whole singing voice thing.
Right.
And so maybe Lawrence has been behind that too, because it's interesting that he would have said that to you. I think that our singing voice is what's informing me by singing is the fear of really that full expression. as well as noticing more of the tone and the vibration of it, which is really, again, back to the right brain healing. So
Yes.
I thanks for sharing that story. It
Oh
seems,
yeah,
seems, it,
absolutely. I forgot that story was there, and we set the stage in the conversation, and I went, oh my goodness, I never shared this with Patti. But yes, and I felt just such a vibration
yeah,
over my whole being after I sang it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then even a mutual friend, and Kim, she was there, and she went, oh my gosh, I'm about to cry.
Oh,
And
yeah.
because I too have been told, I took training as a child, but in my very sad marriage, I was always told that I couldn't sing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was an illusion. And so a lot of my therapy is singing whenever I can, sort of like dancing like nobody's watching.
Yeah.
And I did. I sang. I sang a verse from "Can't Cry Hard Enough," and it. I mean, the whole room. It just. I could tell Lawrence was there. It was so beautiful.
Well, and the research is showing too that prosodic sound, which is the rhythm under the music, is the highest form of sensory healing right now.
Mm,
Stevens Porges's polyvagal theory, which I was writing about, which I've written about in the book. You know, the sound, because again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to change the neural networks through
right.
nonverbal sensory experiences, and sound, prosodic sound, is the highest way, the most effective way to do that. So Lawrence must have had an intuitive hit, as he did often, in suggesting that
Yes.
you do that. And I think that you and I need to keep singing.
Oh, absolutely. And I was just so amazed and inspired by your book launch when you sang with Rebecca. It was so inspiring, and it encouraged me. And that's a lot of my homework sometimes in my own coaching is to sing and to understand that I do have a beautiful voice no matter what. And again, I was trained. I auditioned for Annie when I
You
was 9.
did.
Yes,
Oh,
and I got a call back.
oh my gosh. That's awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah. That whole
That's
nationwide search for the movie. And it was fun. It was a great experience.
Elisa. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that is super fun.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So, and my mom used to always say, oh, you have such a beautiful voice. You could totally sing.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, wow, you know, how did and this goes back to authenticity architecture
Mm-hmm.
with, how did I allow, this girl, how did I allow
Yeah.
myself to believe someone else's projection on me?
Mm-hmm.
And so, again,
Well, and that's a perfect example of grace too, and the fact that
mhm.
your mother said you have a beautiful voice. You got other messages later which made you quiet your voice, and then there's Lawrence Freedom being in his Lawrence Freedom style saying, "Why don't you sing it?"
Right.
That's grace. That's grace to me,
It
because
is.
kind of like me singing with Rebecca Folsom, where did that come from? Wanting to do it for him because I knew he loved the song and
Sure.
it felt right. And that's grace. That's
Yeah,
grace.
that's great.
And I think we all have a voice. And Rebecca, I'm taking lessons with her now, and it's terrifying because I'm going to sing 2 songs by myself on May 1st, not with
Oh,
her,
really?
not in tandem with her like I did at the event.
Sure.
And whoa.
Is it going to be in front of an audience?
It is going to be in Lafayette at
Oh,
East Simpson Coffee House, and all of her students get to sing 2 songs on their own.
oh my goodness, how awesome. Oh my,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Speaking of Lawrence laughing, as we were saying earlier, I'm sure he's
Yes,
just having a great time with this one.
having a really good time. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Well, and again, I think he is the only person I would have sang for.
Mm.
And when he said, well, why don't you sing it? And again, that was a year before he passed away. And then after he transitioned, the first Love Notes from Heaven on Valentine's Day. He had been gone for about 3 or 4 months, and I did it for him. So
I wished I'd been there. I missed that one. I think I was at the one after.
oh yes, I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, he was like that, wasn't he? He
Oh,
had that, and so many people loved him. So, I really felt the collective loss when he died as well. I felt so many people grieved for a long time, like his
we did.
clients and the people who'd gone through his addiction treatment program and the people who'd worked with him as a practitioner at Mount Church. I'm getting kind of teary-eyed because he touched so many lives.
He did.
And
he did.
Yeah, so I'm hoping my work helps carry on that legacy. I'll never be Lawrence Freedom, but I do feel the love he had in his heart, and I it's a big motivation behind me being so so out there right now.
Well, I do know he is full of love and light around the work you're doing today, and he's always by your side. You're doing it for the two of you. So thank you, Dr. Patti Ashley, for spending this wonderful time with us. And everybody go to Patti Ashley, Patti with an I, pattiashley.com to get more information. Now, just a few bonus questions. Are you up for it?
Sure. I'm loving our conversation.
Okay, so if you could be at a dinner party with 3 people living or passed away,
oh, gosh.
who would be at your table?
Oh my gosh. It's hard to pick just 3.
I know. Well, then pick as many as you like, but maybe stop at 5. I just limited you. Sorry. No, say exactly what you want to say and we'll go there.
Well, the first thing that came to my mind, which isn't necessary, well, we'll put him at the table too, is Deepak Chopra, because he's right now doing this big movement it's a movement called Never Alone for teen suicide and mental health issues. And he's working with this actress, and they're doing a movie, and they're trying to put resources in the schools all over worldwide right now. So I'd love to have dinner with Deepak right now.
Yes.
And I'd love to bring Jesus and Mary Magdalene to the table, because I feel like I'm not religious. I mean, I was raised Catholic, but the teachings of Jesus always resonated with me as the simple truths of love your neighbor as yourself. You want to know the kingdom of God, look to the children.
Yes.
If you don't want to listen to my story, that's okay. I'll brush the dirt from my feet and I'll move on. He was a peaceful warrior. And I believe that Mary Magdalene was his muse, because I've studied a lot about the archetype of Mary Magdalene, working with women not feeling good enough, and noticing that when the Da Vinci Code came out, she was cut out of the story. So I feel like the two of them together are this archetypal male and female that I want to emulate in my life. It just the quintessential sense of wholeness and grace and connectedness. And so they come a lot in my meditations. It's interesting, when I do sometimes a guided meditation for myself and I ask for guides, I get Jesus and Mary Magdalene, Lawrence and Susan, who was because I feel like, it's, of course, I was a little jealous of Susan when he was alive, but that jealousy is just a human ego thing. And I really know that they're an archetypal pair too. Susan really embraced the divine feminine. And thank God she taught Lawrence all the things he learned before he met me, because he was all schooled. And my mentor, Catherine Kersey, who had the quote of children come into the world very much like a packet of seeds, is always in my heart. And bad with her Alzheimer's right now. I'd love to be able to talk to her again with her, the mind, being lucid as it had been. So there's 5. There's 5. Yeah. I mean, there would be a lot more. That's a great question. Who are yours?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Let's see here. One would be, okay. Nora Ephron.
Don't know her.
She directed and wrote Sleepless in Seattle, and When Harry Met Sally.
Okay.
She's just a powerful woman with a voice, and just a powerful writer. and I'm tapping into my own creativity. And she used to say everything is copy. So everything that happened in her life, she wrote about. So you better be nice to her. you know, that's, she's one. Dr. Wayne Dyer,
Oh yeah.
yes,
Be on my
would
list.
be another. Yes. And speak about grace and just love. A person who really has loving grace is Audrey Hepburn.
Mm, yeah.
She was just the epitome of
Yeah.
grace.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. Just beautiful esteem, beauty, and elegance, but I didn't see an ounce of arrogance.
Mm.
And so that would be my three.
Yeah, you have a
Yeah.
little bit of that Audrey Hepburn archetype in you.
Oh,
I
do
see that.
I?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. All of
well,
those
I'm
actors
honored.
you
Thank you
described.
for saying that.
So,
Oh, I love her. Yes.
yeah.
So much. So that she would definitely, and I would be just drinking all of them in, but drinking in her elegance for sure at the dinner party.
Yeah, that would be a
Yeah.
fun dinner party for sure.
Wouldn't it be? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And then what are some, here's one. What is something really quirky about Dr. Patti Ashley that the world doesn't know too much? Like silly things like Nick Demus's was he watches General Hospital, things like that.
Uh-huh.
What do you do that feeds your soul that we don't quite know about that you wouldn't mind sharing?
Oh my gosh. Uh, wow. Well, I've already said some of them, which has been mandalas and singing.
Yeah,
Um,
you did.
what's quirky? I mean, I love to dance. I like to do funky dance at like Nia, which is a combination of dance and martial arts and yoga. And
Oh, I love it.
I can get a little wild and wacky in there and love that freedom of expression. Um,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's
Think
beautiful.
quirky. What is quirky? I think everything about me is a little quirky most of the
Quirky. Oh
time.
yeah, that's me too. I'm like quirky. You asked me to be quirky. I'm just here. I'll show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, it's part of the authenticity architecture is being able to be who we are, regardless of,
Hmm.
what other people think, as long as we're kind. I mean, I think that's the important part. Cinderella is my favorite fairy tale. And in one of the Disney ones that came out not too long ago, her mother was actually dying at the beginning of the movie. Most of the Cinderella stories, you don't see the mother, but the mother archetype is dying. And she said, I want you to remember to always have courage and be kind.
Oh, I love that. Well,
Yeah.
we're going to make that our closing statement. So, Dr. Patti Ashley, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Much
Oh,
love,
thank
light,
you.
and insight.
Yeah, it was delightful. I love you.
Love
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you.